This class deals with action learning, and it's one of several classes on this topic on the course. Needless to say, you should consult all of the classes and look over all of them. Also, stop the classes, make your own notes, and pad out what you've learned from the videos and from what you read generally about this area. But in this class, we want to more specifically contrast traditional learning with action learning. So there are differences in approaches to learning. There are, as I said, traditional learning, which we can associate with schools, colleges, universities, different types of learning. Essentially, the information there is handed down to us. It's received knowledge. So someone may have analysed companies in the past who experience a particular problem, may have written up the solutions to those problems, got the solutions published, they were criticised, the publications were refined, and eventually it perhaps finds its way into a textbook that we can study. And that's received learning. It doesn't have to be a case study. Sometimes received learning can be in the form of pure mathematics or some vague concept in another discipline. Again, it's all handed down. We are receiving it. It's coming to us as the learner. On the other side here we have action learning. And action learning is, by contrast, we are more involved in the learning. We are more learning by doing, learning by working on the problem ourselves. So there is a big distinction between the two types of learning, and we'll set out some points now to illustrate how these differences can be viewed. First of all, as I just said, traditional learning tends to be historic case studies which are analysed and solutions found and then written up and passed on to us, and we read them as students and we learn from that experience. And in many respects that's good. We have learned from others' experiences. It doesn't have to be case studies, as I said earlier. It could be any form of learning, but it's passed on to us. That's the point. It comes down to us. Whereas with action learning, we are involved. We are dealing with the situation. It's a current, real situation, and we're dealing with it to try and find a solution. So we are learning by doing. We're learning by being involved now. There is nothing handed down to us to give us instructions about this. We have our general education, we might have a business education or an engineering business background or whatever it is, but essentially we're working on this problem to try and find a solution. And there are very few sources that can help us, if any. So there's a big distinction between traditional and action learning. It's also the case that traditional learning is individual focused. Traditional learning, I take out a textbook and I read the textbook and I learn from the textbook. It's individual. I do it. Whereas with action learning, there tends to be a group-based learning situation. We work as a group. We have a problem in a business or in a company, let's say, and it's not just one person trying to find a solution. There may be a whole group of people working on it to try and find a solution and resolve the issue. So it tends to be more group-based. Again, a big distinction between the two. With traditional learning, we're learning about others. We're learning about their solution to the problem that they posed. How did they go about solving it? What were the solutions? What were the methods of solution, and so on? We're learning about others and their approaches. Whereas with action learning, we're learning about ourselves and others. We're learning about our approach to solving this problem. We're learning about how we approached it. We approached it perhaps with no guidance. We just had to solve the problem. And we might have worked as a part of a group. So we'd have learned about the group and how to work with others within that group to try and resolve the issue, and what problems arise from all of that situation, what problems arise within a group, and how do we resolve that. And how did we resolve the technical problem, the issue that brought us together in the first place? So again, it's a big distinction. One, we're learning about others, the traditional learning, and the other one, we're learning about ourselves and how we worked as a part of a group and how we contributed to the solution of some problem. Then we have the study of other organizations, which tends to be the situation with traditional learning. We pick a textbook, let's say, and we learn something about organizations, or we learn about something about problem solving or operations management, whatever it is, and we learn about a problem, but generally speaking, it's about other organizations. It's not immediately affecting us. This is something we're reading in a book that perhaps happened in another organization in a different time period even. So it's studying other organizations, whereas action learning, we're studying our own organization. We're studying where we're working now. Again, a big distinction. With traditional learning, it's a problem of planning. It's a problem of learning from sources, textbooks, articles, published papers, seminars, and so on. We're learning from various sources. And then we draw up plans and we work towards plans, and we look at formal planning, and we look at solutions based on plans and the plans themselves are based on ideas which have been resolved, written up in the literature. So it's a whole planning framework to try and solve. The problem has a plan, and if the plan is followed, the problem will be solved. But with action learning, it's planning, it's doing all of that, plus it's actually doing it. It's not just planning to show how the problem can be resolved, but it's actually solving the problem. It's doing. So one is just planning. It's in the abstract, if you like. It's just resolving the issue and showing how the issue can be resolved on paper. Where the other one is resolving it on paper, but then implementing the solution, doing it. That's action learning. Traditional learning is input based. By that we mean we may look at the sources of knowledge and experience and ideas that are contained within literature, within learning situations, and look at these as something which has been input to us. We're absorbing this information. We are taking it in. We're learning from what is there, and we are imbibing it. We're taking it in and learning from that. But we're learning without doing. And that's the contrast with action learning. With action learning, it's an output. We're actually doing it. It's an output in the sense we're trying to fix the problem. And that's an output. And we only know it's fixed when it works, when the problem has been resolved. So it's a result-based activity. With traditional learning, it's showing that you understand the abstract ideas and the ideas that are contained in the literature, and perhaps passing an examination. But with action learning, it's doing, and then the final result is, if the solution proposed works, the result will be good. The problem has been resolved. So it's result based. Again, quite a big distinction between the two. Traditional learning is also, or can also be viewed as past orientated. Almost by definition, traditional learning contains models and ideas and case studies or whatever it is in the literature which are based in the past. They must be based in the past because they've been written up, and that's what we're studying. So it's looking backwards into organizations in the past. The action learning one is based in the present. It's looking at the situation right now. It's confronting a problem within work right now. And it's not just trying to resolve that problem now, but trying to find a way of capturing the experience of resolving that problem so that it can be used in the future should the same problem arise. So with traditional learning, it's looking to what happened in the past, which has now been written up in case studies or in models or in chapters of books or articles online or whatever it is. So it's past orientated. It's looking at the past. Whereas action learning is looking at the present problem, trying to fix the present problem and capturing that experience from fixing it and using it in the future. So it's present or future orientated. Traditional learning tends to be low risk. Low risk in the sense that we read what the solutions are and what's being proposed. And it's been written up, it's been refined by academics and practitioners, and there have been perhaps seminars on the topic and arguments put forward backwards and solutions found. And in the end, we get to a situation where it's in a textbook or it's in an article, and it's been criticized, it's been refined, it's been improved, and therefore there's very low risk. The reader can read about the problem and how it was resolved, and there's low risk. It comes to a neat end. The problems at the start, the methods of solution, and all of these have been refined through discussion by the author of the article, looking at what others have done and discussing it in seminars and looking for criticisms and so on. And it moves us down to the end, and here is the solution. So the reader could then look at it as a situation which is closed almost. It's like a closed system. A problem at the top and a solution that's set out with an end, which is the answer. Or if there's not an answer, why there can't be an answer. So it's low risk for the reader. It's self-contained. But on the action learning side, there's high risk. The action learning side, there is a problem within the business, let's say, and the manager or the operator or whoever it is must try and fix that problem. There's no guarantee that they can. High risk. There's no guarantee they can fix it within a short space of time. High risk. So with action learning, there's a high risk. It may be that the problem can't be fixed, but for the moment they don't know that. So they're still committing resources, committing time and effort to try and resolve it, when in fact experience later will tell them it couldn't have been fixed. So all of these are high risk situations in action learning. But with traditional learning, it's all the work, all the hard work has been done. It's been refined and published so that the student of that particular topic can see what how the solutions were worked out and learn from those solutions. But there's no risk to the reader. They don't have to do anything other than read it and understand it. Action learning, it has to be fixed. With traditional learning, the reader is quite passive towards the material. The reader is not doing anything other than studying the solutions. The reader is reading the literature. The reader is absorbing the literature. It's very passive. The reader is not actively doing anything, just reading the literature. With action learning, they have to be active. They have to solve the problem. It's a practical problem. It's a real problem. It's one that confronts the business right now. It confronts that particular person right now. And they have to have a solution to it. That's active. It brings about an active response from that person. They must engage the problem. They must fix it. It's active. So again, quite a big distinction. And then we have theories. Traditional learning emphasized the role of theories, and that's good for a lot of academic study. There's a theory about something. The theory will state a certain relationship. It may state several assumptions that the particular model will make. It'll engage in a type of logical thinking, criticisms, and then it'll have a conclusion, and that's it. It's for the student of that traditional learning approach to understand the theory and understand the implications of the theory and understand how the theory could be perhaps applied, and look at some situations where the theory can shed light on practical problems. But it's worked out in theory. Now, action learning is a very practical application. It's not theoretical. It's trying to fix the specific problem that confronts the business here and now. It's trying to fix the problem so that it doesn't exist and the business can continue. So it's a very practical application. It's applying the skills and abilities of the operator or the manager to try and resolve the problem now in a very practical way. Get it working. Fix it. Whereas the theories, these are broad overviews of particular relationships. It posits a relationship between variable 1 and variable 2, looks at the assumptions that are being made and looks at the logic of the model and works out the conclusion. And that's all very fine. It gives the reader an insight, who can then go on perhaps to apply the theory in certain situations to see if the theory is robust, if it holds up. That's an area we call the scientific method, which we're not going to engage in this session, but there are videos on it elsewhere. The practical application is that the solution has to be found, and that's quite distinct. That means more hands-on, more doing. And all of these are based on that particular work. That's all we're going to deal with in this particular session. It's an important session because it simply looks at the distinction between traditional learning and action learning. But from this, and particularly from the slide you've got in front of you right now, the distinctions are quite stark, but they do illustrate the importance and nature of action learning. And it's often something that we don't think about immediately, but there is a process of learning that we're going through, in a sense, all the time. We're going through it in our work lives, in our social lives. We go through it all the time. We are constantly updating what we know about the world, and in this case, what we know about the business and the activities of the business. When something goes wrong, how to find solutions for that. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.